Okay, with that, we would like to reconvene the zoning commission meeting. So if anyone hasn't been sworn in, the next two cases are still a quasi-judicial hearing. So if you've not been sworn in, please rise and we'll swear you in. If you have, that is fine. And to speak at the commission, you have to be sworn in tonight for these commission meetings. Okay. Just waiting for everybody to readjust. Okay. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth? Okay. Everybody good? All right. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and all testimony given tonight is truthful to your best of knowledge? Okay, thank you very much. With that, continuation of quasi-judicial hearing for planned unit development request case 5-2019 PUD. Mr. Drury?
Thank you. The applicant is Decker Building Group, LLC, on behalf of Gregory and Ruth Gildea, Jacqueline and Michael Lyon, Christopher Hayes and William Woolner, and Jennifer and Mark Stein, who are the property owners. The location, the address we're using is 660 4 Mile Road, but the book, page, and parcels are book 500, page 402, parcels 20, 36, 38, 39, and part of 40. All of those parcels are zoned A residence, which is single family. Again, the request is for a planned unit development application to allow for 34 single family lots on 19 acres, 12.62 acres undeveloped, 6.4 acres open space, which equates to 34% open space. The minimum lot size is proposed at 9,100 square feet, a front yard setback of 30, a side yard setback of 5, and a rear yard setback of 30. The case was heard last month and continued. The motion read as follows. Continue the case in progress for the submittal of a landscape plan that includes the proposed walking trail through open space, as well as more information regarding the Hillside Trust easement. Other information that we wrote in the letter, in addition to the motion we suggested to the applicant to discuss, include stormwater detention and runoff, buffering the adjacent residential areas, and identification of trees that will be remaining or removed. This is the site in question again. 4 Mile Road is coming through here. This parcel is not a part of the project, so there are three single family homes. This is an accessory structure here that would all be removed as part of the project. This is an aerial view of the property. The topography. There, again, as we stated last month, there are two knolls somewhat. The flatter area, of course, is to the northern portion of the site. There is a ravine that goes through this particular area, and then 4 Mile Creek is in this particular area. The topography is very steep going into those ravines. Again, all of the property and the surrounding zoning is a single family. This is the proposed subdivision layout, a cul-de-sac coming in off of 4 Mile Road. There are some lots that would have access only on 4 Mile Road, and then the rest would be off of the new street. The proposed open space is around in this area here. These are some of the site photos. The first set of pictures is in this general vicinity, looking to the north, to the existing trees to the north. Those are these evergreen trees here. 4 Mile Road is just off of the slide, and this is the driveway of that northern single-family home. Oh, sorry, went the wrong direction. This is looking at their backyard. Generally looking to the east, to the southeast. This is the house that I pointed out that is not part of the development. This is the driveway that is directly south of that site. And we're looking back at 4 Mile Road. This is 4 Mile Road here. This is one of the ravines that are mentioned on the topography map. This is looking, again, back out toward 4 Mile with the house that's not part of the development. This is looking into one of those ravines. This is looking from the private drive to the south of the project, just at the creek. This was a better view for us to get a picture of the creek. We'll go back to the... So again, like the last case, I think I'll let the applicant go over the new material that they submitted, unless you have any other questions for me.
All right, thank you. Any questions of staff? Ms. McBride?
Can I just one question, Paul? Excuse me, we're saying in the staff report 6.4 acres of open space, and the plans that they submitted show 7.3?
There's actually 32 lots. There's not 34.
Yes, that was a change that should have been noted on the staff report. So one of the reasons why is the original plan did not show dedication of right-of-way on 4 Mile. And from the original letter that we received from the county engineer, it had the wrong figure for the right-of-way that would be required. So at that time, when they did dedicate the additional right-of-way, 2 lots were lost, so the lots went down to 32. This revised plan also shows a 40-foot half right-of-way versus the 50-foot, and that's a correction from Hamilton County.
Okay, because that was my other question too.
Yes,
is why it
sorry.
went from
Thank you
50
for
to
bringing
40.
that up.
So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right, if the applicant would like to speak, please.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Hunt. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Aronoff, Rosen and Hunt, 2200 US Bank Center, downtown Cincinnati. I'm going to just briefly address a couple of the legal issues, and then I've got the engineer here, but also the developer to address the revised site plan. As Paul indicated, first on the right-of-way issue, there was some confusion from the county engineer's office. I actually talked to Ted Hubbard twice, and they were apologetic. The existing right-of-way is 20 feet from the center line. The requirement is, under their thoroughfare plan, is an additional 20 feet. So there'll be a total of 40 feet of right-of-way on our side of the road. And because of that, we're now at 32 lots as opposed to the 34. So I think that addresses the lot issue. The other issue was the Hillside Trust. I talked to Eric a couple times at the Hillside Trust. If you look at the site plan, if you recall, the 2 open space parcels, the one to the top, towards the top, that shows the trail with the circle, that is subject to an existing conservation easement in favor of the Hillside Trust. The other larger 4+ acre parcel below that would be open space, not subject to a current conservation easement. And I did talk to the Hillside Trust. They indicated they probably do not want that. They do not want to take on responsibility having a conservation easement. It's just their view. Now, they didn't have an opportunity to take it to the full board, but that was Eric's view, that they don't want that. So our current plan is the 2 open space parcels would be owned by the homeowners association. One would be subject to the existing conservation easement in favor of the Hillside Trust. And then I would put similar restrictions on the other parcel. If the Hillside Trust changes their mind, we'd be glad to put the conservation easement on it. But I thought when I do the HOA documents, I'll just put very similar provisions in the documents so that that area's conservation also. In the existing conservation easement area, the only thing we're doing is a trail. There's an existing trail. We'll probably make it a little nicer. It's not paved or anything like that. We'll work with the Hillside Trust, but that is an amenity for the community, and the trail also goes through the other open space parcel. I think probably the other issue you brought up at the last meeting we should address is the buffering, landscaping, and I'll happy to answer any questions and I'll come back, but if not, I'll have Chase Decker come up and kind of explain the revised plan and go into the landscaping and the buffering. That sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Chase Decker, 6878 Jennifer Lynn Drive. I'm the developer.
I would just like to point out some changes that we made since the last meeting. You all addressed the issue of not having adequate plans on the landscaping plan. If you can look at the typical buffer planting detail, I can point out a few different areas where that's going to come into use. The northern section of the property, where lot 1, 2, 3, and 4 are, all of the trees in that area will be removed. Our neighbor to the north requested that they all be removed, and he even asked us if we would be willing to clear the trees on his side of the property as well. I don't have a problem with that. It's up to him and me after the fact. In the meantime, I did speak to staff about what would be adequate in their mind with what would work out for a landscape plan. We signified trees every 10 feet, staggered by 5 feet. They're 6-foot evergreen trees, every 2 trees, and then you have a 2-inch caliper hardwood tree in between every 2 of the deciduous trees. So that would come into play on the entire northern premises of the property. And then I'd also like to point out around 6384 Mile, we would also be removing all the trees surrounding that parcel as well. And then we will be planting the same exact typical buffer planting that will be in that area as well, all the way around those lots. The last time you guys also wished for us to address the setbacks surrounding that parcel at 638. We did, and there is an additional 5 feet, actually an additional 10 feet that we accounted for in side yard setback on both sides of 6384 Mile, as well as behind 6384 Mile on both lot 19 and lot 20. We took that into consideration when you asked us to, and I believe the setback there is 35 feet. So we added an additional 5 foot of setback, as well as included the buffered area there as well. I'd like to address one other thing. I believe it was Mr. Henson who brought it up last time. I'm not 100% sure, but on lot 17, the homeowner to the south of lot 17 expressed their dismay that there would be homes in their view behind their home. I'd like to point out a couple different statistics with that. There is not only a 35, I believe, foot or 30-foot side yard setback, which isn't required on lot 17. So we did set that home back away from the property line. And then if you actually measure from our property line to the corner of their home, it's over 100 feet to the closest part and over 200 feet to the furthest part. Not only that, there's 30 feet in rise from the back of their house up to our parcel, and it's a extremely densely wooded area in between our properties. So I don't believe that there would be any adequate need for a planting detail in that area. I think that we've done everything that we should to address the surrounding property owners' needs. Do you have any questions for me?
Mr. Lewis, any questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Mr. Lewis, you weren't here last time. I don't know if you were able to see, we brought along a couple elevations as well.
I was able to review the notes.
Okay, so you did see elevations. I just wanted to point out that all the homes are the empty nester style type product. They are brick wraps or the equivalent of stone, and we'll make sure that the style of the homes is definitely adequate.
Thank you.
Ms. McBride.
I guess one question I have is the clearing limits at I guess it's the south end of lot 17.
Yes.
Are really close to your property line.
Yes.
And so how will you ensure that that is in fact, I mean, it says approximate, so how will you ensure that that clearing actually takes place on your property?
I mean, we can stake it out ahead of time and make sure that it's adequate. Our engineer is here, and he'll be on site as well at that time to make sure that we stick to the bounds that are set in these plans, which I'd like to make sure of as well. It's a beautiful wooded area, and I wouldn't like to take any more trees down than I have to to satisfy our development.
Mr. Henson. Okay,
Thank you all.
thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor?
I'm Steve Stewart with Genesis Design, the civil engineer for the project, 3439 Wellston Place. I just want to clarify the open space increase since our last site plan submittal. We just trimmed those lots back 9 through 15 or 16, like Mr. Henson suggested, and that's how the green space increased. So those lots did extend all the way down to the property line. So that's where it went up to 7.3 acres versus the 6.4 that was originally submitted. So.
Would you like to address the question about the clearing limits?
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the little slither right in there. Yeah, if depending that house will sit back, that won't be cleared right in there. I mean, obviously, we just set that up to, original preliminary.
I think there was also a question last month about wetlands and the Army Corps and so forth. Have you guys looked into that?
No, and I'm going to reiterate with what Steve Hunt said. Those are regulatory issues, and as they progress through the land purchasing process, there'll be a phase 1, and those items will be identified, and we'll address them as they come up. Which is fairly standard on projects.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor? If you could just state your name and address. Wait till you, come up to the microphone so we can get that on
My
record.
name is Al Ganem. I live at 1021 Phillips. I just want to say, I bought my property 30-something years ago or 30 years ago for an investment. Now I'm trying to sell it, and I got people telling me I can't sell it. I don't know what goes on. They could have bought it 30 years ago for the same price I bought it. They wanted to keep it, they can buy it, they could have bought it last week before the realtor. They wait till now. Now they want all this, they want all that. I'm just telling you, I want my share too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Okay. You could give and state your name and address, please.
Chase Decker, 6878 Jennifer Lynn. I'd just like to clarify the previous owner who just got up here is part owner in the 4.5 acres of open space in the bottom. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll open the floor to anyone like to speak opposed. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Eric Russo at the Hillside Trust, the Executive Director, 710 Tusculum Avenue, 45226. I was not aware of this meeting the last time it occurred in March to make it in time to talk about this development, but it was brought to my attention about a day before, and I've now had a conversation to find what's being planned for this property. I am in opposition to the zone change because it appears that the Hillside Trust Conservation easement is being used as part of the green space calculation. Now, legally, the developer can certainly buy a property encumbered with a Hillside Trust conservation easement, but it seemed like he's double dipping by saying he's giving back to the community what already is basically not just de facto green space, it's legally defined green space. We've had this easement since 1987. In fact, by way of history, this development goes back to 1987 when it was being proposed as walled and exclusive 5-acre home sites on this paper here by Michael Dermott and Richard Moore. They had promised to create a 29-acre conservation easement, donate that to the Hillside Trust in exchange for building 5 luxury homes in this area. It was never done. The developer never made the easement. It was basically left up to individual property owners to go ahead and record or establish the easements. So at that time, 2 owners, the Cucci's and the Monteiths, established easements at 6232 and 6234 Lilbur Lane, which comes back into this valley and the ravine back there. Later on in 1996, 2 more owners, the Berets and Langs, also added their backyards into the easement area. So it's a total of about 8.9 to close to 9 acres that are back in there. I just have a problem administratively that this property that is encumbered by the Hillside Trust is being used essentially to calculate the green space acquisition. We are one of the largest land banks in the greater Cincinnati area. We have over 1,360 acres of preserved green space, both in easement and in fee simple ownership. Now, I've been with the Hillside Trust now since 1989, and we've never ever had a developer purchase land that's encumbered with an easement owned by the trust and then come back to a township or a municipality and say, hey, we'd like to make this part of our green space calculation for development. This has never happened ever. Secondly, if this development does go through, I've got very serious concerns about lots 7 through 16, which are located on top of Cope Formation with Eden soils. Those slopes are about 25 to 40% in grade. It's not that they can't be developed, but it's going to take an incredible amount of due diligence to ensure they're being engineered properly. And to give you a point of reference, Columbia Parkway has these very same conditions of Cope and Eden soils. And we know what the Parkway is doing right now. It's been doing this for the last 90 years since it was cut into the hillside. And right now, we're also in the midst of about a 16-month epidemic, if you will, of landslides within this region. I've never seen the extent and the devastation of landslides the last 16 months that I've witnessed. I've been on the news now 10 times, interviewed by news stations, including today by Channel 12, to talk about this problem. And I would believe that in many ways we are probably qualified for federal disaster relief based on the extent and devastation of landslides occurring right now in this region. And I would think with those 10 lots, I'd be very concerned if I was Anderson Township about approving development that could actually have down the road, 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, extreme weathering, slippage, and potential landsliding based on the development of those 10 lots there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
My name is Ed Becker, and I live at 5544 Mile. And I'd like to state my opposition to this project because I'm concerned about the water drainage that could be affected in this creek. I've lived in my home since 1992, and more recently, the creek has actually come over. I own that private drive, or I'm part owner of that easement, and you had a picture of it, which was really neat. And if you could show that to everybody, I just wanted to bring up the fact that the water from the creek has come over that's standing on the drive that we just replaced. It comes over the drive, and 7 or 8 homeowners back there were totally isolated, or would have been if it had gone completely washed out. We had to spend $120,000 to repair it, and we're not able to bring this up to code to make it a dedicated street. We just can't afford it, and I'm just worried that all the water from developments may affect this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
My name's Jeff Harbin. I live at 5644 Mile. And if I may, I have some photos I'd like to share with you all.
What was your address again?
5644 Mile.
Thank you.
So as we go through these, the first photo, well, this photo, as we said, you can see the erosion that's already happening. That's from this last season of rain. If you're looking straight back, that's all already slipping away, which would infringe, I believe, on Ed Becker's property. But the first picture that you're looking at here, the first, second, third, these 3 pictures are all from the ravine where partially the Hillside Trust is part of, or owns the easement too. You can see that the erosion has already caused a lot of damage. There's trees just falling all over the place. This one was just happened with this last rainstorm. So that's that steep graded hill that they're proposing on building. Back of the houses would be on that. So it's basically from I can't see the lot numbers, however, the east side of that going over the hill. Also, what you see on these other two pictures is you see how wide the creek meanders. It's at some points at 25 yards, which there's setbacks. It is a U.S. protected waterway. The sewage system that they're going to be building, that they said that they have ample amount per MSD to tap into. Highlighted is a break in that sewage system, which is typical of the issues that are going on back there. This photo, which they did address the one property, however, this is looking off my back porch, and I will be looking no longer at trees, I'll be looking at the back of that cul-de-sac. So as the PUD designation is supposed to adhere to, if that doesn't have a detrimental impact on my property and my property value and all the things that it says it cannot do, then I have a hard time understanding what would. And these other pictures are from, as the neighbors said before, and I ask you if I could please get another minute on here. This is last time we got a rain. These next, all the way up until this picture, this is our driveway. This is our driveway, the flood that came over the culvert, right? This is the trash and debris that comes down from that hillside because there's so much erosion. This is all the sediment, and this is actually all of my property next to the creek because it went over so far. And these are the trees that were left in the driveway that my neighbors and I had to move to be able to get to work that morning. The last two are just the end of 4 Mile and Kellogg because there's so much issues with the drainage issue there. But I want to go back to a quote that said, Mr. Henson, on February 25th at the zoning meeting, you asked Mr. Jury, do we typically use non-developable portion of site in our density calculations? Yes, we include, and this is a quote, yes, we include everything except for the right-of-way. It's written in our zoning resolution that density versus gross because we know that because we don't know if it's not developable. The floodplain can be filled, the hillside can be graded, the property can be modified, right? The retention basin that they are proposing on the backside of the property, there's a sewage line actually going through there. They cannot build over top of the sewage system that goes through there. And because it's a U.S. waterway, they have to adhere to the setbacks of that creek. So if you back out the hillside truss portion, it brings their density from what they're claiming is a 1.89 to 2.18, and that's excluding the inability to build on the creek, on the sewage. So their net density calculation is far off. And as far as a reasonable reduction to be able to get a PUD accomplished, the setbacks, the lot area, a reduction of 50%, the setbacks, a reduction of 40%, the side, a reduction of 67%, those aren't minimal. Those are very, very much material to the overall project. This can be built upon. However, it has not been addressed about how the impacts of my property, and also if the developer is, if the PUD is a give and take, why is all the land that's part of this under contract pending the PUD approval? If he can build and recognizes that this land is buildable, then why would he not just purchase it and then develop and go for a PUD? And why would it be contingent upon a PUD approval? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Yes, please.
My name is Wayne Haller. I live at 638 4 Mile Road. Can you pull up the topographical map? Oh, yeah, I mean,
I'm
for
sorry, it's
people to
hard.
see back there,
Oh, you want-
the
You want this one?
that one, yeah.
Okay.
As you can see, the darkened area at the very steep, the hill they're talking about, if the road, since the road's not overimposed, assuming that's about where that house is, where they're going to take down at 632. They're cutting into the ridges, the hillside, to build their houses. With a 10-foot, 5-foot side yard and a 5-foot side yard, they have no, not going to dig from the up, they're going to dig down, they're going to basically circumcise that ridge to make their buildable lots. So any tree that's going to be standing, 5 foot by 5 foot by 5 foot by whatever they need to do in the front and the back, there will not be a single tree left on that hillside. There'll be some on the cliffs. There'll be some, up around where it's shallower. I got a couple pictures that I took on my cell phone after the last meeting, if I can just pull those up real quick. Excuse me for fat fingers. This is a building lot from my backyard. 37 and 38, which would be, 19 and 20.
Wasn't the first time, so.
Mr. Drury, I think anything we're looking at, we need to have as exhibits for the record.
Okay, I'm
So-
sorry, but I'm just look at the topographical map. There's no flat land. They're building on hillside. My exhibit is the topographical map between my property and 1920. If you can see what I'm talking about on that. The only flat land is built upon in this area. The house behind me is on a flat piece of land. The Gilday's property is on a rolling piece of land. The rest are ridges. A very steep ridge and a shallow ridge where I have a storm creek. The one that washed out the private drive, that creek runs through my backyard. And during storm times, it's a 5-foot wide creek. Dry times, it's dry. But they will have they want a retaining pond. This is a natural runoff for Mount Washington and Harrison Township going to the Ohio River. What doesn't go on this side of the ridge comes down this side of the ridge, and as the last 20 years, it's getting wider and wider. They say, well, we'll make it so it can't come up more. It's a natural drain. All right, I'll let the time go.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition?
Good evening, committee. How are you? My name is David Garvey, and I live at 686 4 Mile Road. I am the adjacent northern property. Okay. As you can imagine, I'm quite concerned about the traffic coming in and out of this development. All the traffic lights will be shining right through my yard, right through my house. Okay. I had contacted Mr. Decker in an attempt to have a mounding system built to try to deflect the lighting. Okay? He was not happy with the idea, obviously, and has rejected it. I am grateful for Chase for willing to cut down the trees that are existing. There are some existing pine trees that are overgrown, and they need to be taken down. Okay? However, I do believe there should be mounding, and I don't know if that can happen or not. And another thing I'd like to talk about is the setback. It appears to me that the gentleman that was just here in front of us, Wayne, has a 35-foot setback, and I only have a 30-foot all along the northern side. Can you confirm or deny that?
It states 30.
On my side. What about Wayne?
That's 638 4 Mile. I thought it was this one. So 15-foot side yard and an undenoted rear yard. Okay. Yes, 35. I apologize. Thank you.
I want 5 more feet. That's not asking too much, is it? Those houses are gonna be awfully close to my home. I did bring you a picture of my home looking from south, or north to south. That was a picture of my pool looking down onto the Gildays property. As you can see, it's a quite lovely view. That road is going to be roughly where the diving board is that you see there. So you can certainly understand my concern. Do you have any questions for me? That's it?
All right, thank you.
All right.
Anyone else like to speak in opposition?
Actually,
We're gonna keep
supposed
that
to
one.
keep this as a,
Exhibit.
I'm gonna take it home, put it in my living room.
Might want to label it.
Just a minute. Ma'am?
My name is Cheryl Palmer, and my husband Todd and I are here, and we live at 574 Mile Road. Sort of the theme of my discussion here is to anticipate problems. Could I see the topography map real quick? Thanks. And is there a pointer?
Yes.
this time?
Just the top button there.
Okay. Okay, this is where I live. We live right here. This is a very steep hill. This project is located in our backyard. There are lots of homes in this area, and if you switch to this development plan, you will see this is all happening in our backyard. There's a street coming in. This is a steep hill. Again, like I mentioned last time, we are very concerned about erosion, not only for our home, but we have a barn over here. This project is a detriment to us. What are we to do if harm is brought to our home? Oftentimes, people's homes are their largest investment in their lives. And there are many homes that are affected with this plan. That's a detriment. Secondly, the property on 4 Mile that has a for sale sign, right here, about 10 to 12 years ago, this had fill dumped on it. The exact date could be found as the owner at the time was fined by the township. This fill isn't stable ground to build on. Third, there are 2 huge trees located in designated lots. This lot here and this lot here. I have a plan and some photos, if I can share them. Is that okay?
Distribute, and we'll keep one for record.
You can keep them.
Need trees?
Trees.
These trees are huge. They're like 12 feet in circumference. And I would imagine by their location that they're slated to be cleared. It just seems a shame that something so large, these huge oak and walnut trees, could be cleared for this project. I have an architectural and design background. My dad was a builder, and so was my grandfather. Most PUD designs that I've seen enter on the main road and go into the space. However, this design goes along the length of 4 Mile. How is this going to look good? Would there be any natural vegetation left along 4 Mile here? Would the setbacks be consistent with the other homes on the street? I'm just not quite sure. What is the point of the sidewalk that's on either side of 638? the plan goes around this address number 638. How is that going to look? We've also noticed that there's been a lot of talk about landscaping and buffering. If you notice, there's no buffering. Oops. There's no buffering around the property that is adjacent to ours. We have zero buffering planned.
Sorry, you're out of time. Is there
Oh,
anything
okay.
else? I'll give you a couple quick seconds.
Okay. And lastly, I just want to say, there are a lot of issues in this natural ravine space in the area by that. There's Blue Line Creek, there's now a hillside trust, there's a sewer that serves the community. Trying to manicure this kind of natural and beautiful ravine with grass that has box turtles, turkey, fox, coyote, owl, deer shouldn't be done. This space could and should be dedicated green space. Proposed walking paths with eventual trash cans and picnic tables will quickly be washed away with the first storm. The 4 Mile Creek has changed in the last 8 to 10 years. It moves at a forceful pace, along with an aging infrastructure that floods and can no longer accommodate the amount of water.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. And again, if you could state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Wayne Hollis, 638 4 Mile. Well, let's see if I can find the right button. Which button's the pointer? There we go. This proposed hiking trail, as they call it, over the natural protected land. Don't forget, this is on top of like however high this ridge is. For empty nesters who might be 50, 70 years old, that's a steep climb for a 20-year-old. Most time when we walk, if I have to walk back there, like I've done a few times, I go down to leveler ground and come around this way. Or I walk the old MSD trail. This is straight down. This is just like going down the side of that ravine. Unless you're going to put steps, elevator, escalator, a 50, 60, 70-year-old person is not going to use this at all.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Seeing no hands, if the applicant would like to address the commission on the items that they have heard?
Certainly. Thank you. Let me start with the legal issues, because I think we've gotten into issues that have nothing to do with zoning approval. First, on the density issue, I've reviewed your zoning code. I've talked to your law director. Easement areas are permitted to be included in the calculation of density. And under existing zoning, you probably couldn't get them done, but you could build 38 lots here. PUD makes sense because then you know exactly what you're getting. But the open space, utilizing the conservation easement, that's permitted in the calculation under your code. And there's an amenity in there, the walking trail, which we've talked about. The developers hired Alts and Witzig. We know this is a difficult site to develop. And they're doing all the engineering to make sure we haven't deal with hillside issues. You know, I live in Anderson. I live on a hillside. I know the issues, and that's why you hire a good geotech firm. It's not a zoning issue, but you do that before you do development. So they will be involved in addressing those issues. As far as the drainage down to the creek down there, we'll improve the drainage. There's 3 detention areas on site. We'll meet the Hamilton County stormwater requirements, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with. I certainly am. You cannot increase the amount or the rate of runoff. That's why you have detention areas. The water will be directed down into the detention basin that's on the one open space and the other 2. So it'll actually help. You know, the water won't just be going where it naturally flows now. We'll have streets, there'll be pipes that take it to the detention area. So it'll improve the risk of that. Yes, some of the complaints of the neighbors, I mean, view and stuff, some of these people are 500 feet from this property. It's not, but people have the legal right to sell and have their property developed. I think we all recognize this. My client has hired, I believe, the appropriate engineers to deal with these issues. Many of the issues brought up are not related to zoning. The question here is, is this an appropriate plan for approval? If you say yes and you approve it, then of course we go to Hamilton County for a subdivision approval. We'll deal with the traffic issues, things of that nature through the subdivision process. But those are not necessarily issues. We can talk about them, but they're not necessarily legal issues associated with approving a zone change. Happy to answer any questions. I think Chase will jump up and mention a few more issues that were brought up by the residents.
Any additional questions of the applicant? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm the developer, Jeff Decker, 6878 Jennifer Lynn Drive is where I reside right now. I understand some of the concerns of the neighbors, and I feel for them. The reason I do plan developments with Hamilton County's rules and regulations are so my homeowners don't end up with a house down in a valley in a hole next to a creek where they have water problems. The driveways that they put in for those lots that are commonly cut off in 2 and 3 and 4, 5 acre lots, they put in a substantial, they don't put in a substantial driveway. They put in minimum pipe size when they cross a creek. They don't spend the infrastructural money that they need. They just do the basics for putting the driveway in. They cut off lots, and then people build homes, and they put them in valleys. They put them below hills, and that's something that I've always been concerned with. That's why I've never built in a valley or in a creek or anything, because I don't want the people buying my homes to be subject to some of that in the future. So that's why we try to build on top of ridges. This is a perfect example right here. We're not building on hillsides. If I went with current zoning, I could probably cut that up into maybe 15 to 18 lots, current zoning. The guy north of me would be a side yard. I could be as much as 10 feet from him, from the property line. If I faced my house on 4 Mile and I used that yard as a side yard against him, I would be 10 feet away from him. Now, I know he's wanting some buffering. He wanted me to do some mounds in his yard, and I told him that I couldn't possibly put mounds and trap water in his yard, and his yard would be a lake. I said, I can do buffering, I can plant, but I can't build mounds on my property and trap the water in your yard. Naturally, the water flows from his yard into our property, and it has to consistently do that. So I don't think he understood me. I didn't try to be mean or anything with him. I tried to accommodate him. But any vegetation that we take down, and any vegetation in large trees that are there, are at the end of their life. You can go and see the branches are falling off and everything else. So, I don't want it to fall in a neighbor's yard or the lady below us. I want to take down and put up new trees. Every house that we build will have a landscaping plan in the front yards. People will want trees in their front yards. They'll want additional trees. In that price range, from $500,000 to, say, $900,000, they are going to want substantial landscaping, which will be nice. They don't normally want overgrown trees next to their house that are at the end of their life, and then we can't get to them later on after we build them a home and get in their backyards, and those trees can fall on their house as well as a neighbor. So we'll take down trees that are at the end of their life, and we'll replant other trees, or hardwood trees or what have you, and that's generally what we do for our neighbors, or for our customers, and for the neighbors that are surround us. So, like I say, I understand, other people's concerns, the neighbors' concerns and stuff, but, we're not going to release any more water by this development than it's done currently right now at the existing rate. So, and that's what you want. You want a development plan that calculates all the water into detention areas. We have 3 different areas that we want to take water and slowly release it, so we don't affect anybody downstream. But if we went with just straight zoning and we didn't have to do any detention, we would be flooding everybody downstream. We're doing just the opposite. We want to make sure we don't harm anyone else around the neighbors, any of our existing neighbors. We're trying to do a nice plan that would help that situation. So I've built close to 480 homes. I've never had one complaint or a lawsuit from any customers. And we take a pride in what we do. We make sure that when we come into a community, we do a nice job, and that's how we live by our reputation. So,
Thank you.
do you have any
Mr.
questions
Lewis?
for me?
No, I didn't. I had a question for Mr. Russo. If you could come up and give him the pointer. You said there was 9 acres. Is that 9 acres of the 19 acres?
We have about 9 acres in the valley that's in conservation
Can you
easement.
point to, I mean, the overlay or whatever this, or do you know?
Some of this is actually off the map. Let's see. We have this area here, and then there's a series of lots that go up in this direction here. So I believe they're taking a portion of one of the easement areas and making that part of their green space calculation.
And you said something about lots 7 through 16?
Well, concern I have is that lots 7 through 16 are on cope formation. This is a very steep hillside. The slopes are 15 to 20, 15 or 25 to 40% in grade with Eden soils, and they're highly problematic to develop. They can be built, but it requires a lot of engineering due diligence. And I'd like to say that this is not the fault of the developer or the engineer, but I have to say in my experience that our stormwater calculations are way out of date. And that's not just true in Cincinnati, it's true across a lot of America, because we're seeing major changes in climate right now. Cincinnati is now getting more rainfall in the last several years than it's gotten on average. And if those continue, whatever they're doing according to what the regulations require might be fine, but we get these 100-year storms, which are now happening about every year or so, that's going to be dumping a lot of water down that valley.
Okay.
And again, it's not their fault. They're just following the regulations now. But I think that there's some serious revision need to be done with it when it comes to stormwater calculations. They're way out of date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Question.
you.
Sure. Please come up, state your name again for the record.
Jeff Decker, developer. Jeff Decker, developer. In response, I understand hillsides, wanting to preserve hillsides. That's why we're doing what we're doing, so we don't go straight zoning. If we went just with straight without any PUD or a subdivision public street, we could build all the way down in the bottom of that by the creek if we wanted and disturb that hill, and they would not have anything to say about it. You can't, that's why people are down in the valley as it is, where they shouldn't have built to begin with, alongside the creek. With regards to Kellogg Avenue, with the slippage and everything else, the reason they have that is because they cut into the hillside and they build a wall and they try to hold up a hillside. You can't do that. So that would have never been, that could never be approved today. But that's a problem. Previous engineers and who developers had an idea of doing that, and that's why they're having problems with it. So we're not doing anything like that. We're staying in virgin ground. I have geotechs. I have soil engineers that'll be on site when we dig basements, as well as do the development. We're not building on it. We're not building any houses on fill. It's going to be all virgin ground. And our geotechnical engineer is familiar with the whole area. He has testing of all that whole area. He knows what soils we're working with. So if he was concerned, I would be concerned. I would not be buying the property and putting all my money in it if I thought that my houses were going to slip over the hillsides and I would have unstable homes. So just to let you know, okay?
Thank you. Seeing no other movement from the applicant to address the comments, we'll close the public hearing and open the discussion amongst the commission. So, Mr. Henson?
I think my initial thoughts are that, you are working with some tricky slopes, and I think those chips are going to fall where they may, hopefully not literally. But the plan that we saw last month versus this plan, to me, it appears that you put in a lot of effort to address the concerns that we and the audience had with regard to the landscaping. I would have preferred to see an actual landscaping plan, but understanding what you're kind of laying out for us here in the key and the legend, we can decipher that. I think it is a very valid concern about the walking path. It probably won't be terribly useful if you market it as a marking path or walking path. But all in all, I think this represents a lot of the improvements that were requested of you. And it gets me, it's in line with what I think we were asking you to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McBride?
I'd like to hear from Mr. Powell on his thoughts with regards to the easement area being included in the open space.
I don't have a really solid answer for you, other than the fact that the zoning resolution isn't overly clear on what can and can't be included in open space. I think my thoughts last month were that, you don't want to see a developer going out and buying conservation easements to add to property so that you can increase the number of homes you can build on it. That's why I thought, without considering the elevation issues, the fact that they were including some usable part to that, in other words, a walking path that was specifically allowed under the conservation easement that might allow it to be included as a usable part of the property, part of the development. That being said, obviously the commission has the ability to look at the overall development to see whether it complies with the general standards of the zoning resolution as far as fitting in with the neighborhood. Obviously, you had a couple months ago the other residential development on Clough Pike, which you denied because the homes that were along Clough Pike were too small lots. In other words, it wasn't compatible with the neighborhood. So I think the part of the PUD resolution allows a good deal of discretion to decide whether or not the development as a whole complies with the intent, to see if, for example, some of the argument here is that they're not doing a straight zoning development because they have more of an ability to preserve the natural open spaces and build consistent with the hillsides as opposed to if it was just straight zoning. So that's all I think that you can take into consideration. There's nothing in the code or the zoning resolution says you have to exclude that conservation easement, but I think it's all part of the calculation that you can look at in determining whether or not it complies with the intent of the PUD provisions in the zoning resolution. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to address them, but it's not perfectly clear.
Okay. I mean, it does seem a little bit like double dipping,
Yes, I agree. And it could be even worse. I mean, but that's part of the discretion I think that the zoning commission has on these PUD requests.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Lewis?
My concerns are about the hillside and the slopes and the geotech firm, the study that'll be coming post whatever we agree to do or not do. That those are the issues that are there, but we're not addressing at this point.
Hearing the discussion, anyone want to make a motion concerning this case? I do have a struggle with the conservation easement being, counted towards the green space. It does seem like the opportunity to, further sort of explore those options in the zoning code are there that we need to do, but also, this case in front of us really benefits from that. And usable space by introducing a walking trail is, sort of a token point towards making it a usable space.
Well, and the question is, how usable is the walking trail?
Yes. So with that, anyone like to make a motion? Everyone, not this time.
I guess I will make a motion that we approve case 5-219 PUD, reserves of Anderson, 660 4 Mile Road. And the approval is based on the staff's analysis of the zoning resolution compliance and the compliance with the applicable plans, and including all of the recommendations that staff finds pursuant to the evaluation of the PUD criteria and the general standards for PUD plan approval. I would also include that all of the evergreen trees are to be a minimum of 6 feet. The plans say 4 to 6, so they should be a minimum of 6 feet. That the proposed buffer, it's not shown on the plan that is to be located on the north side, east side, and south side of 638 4 Mile Road, as well as along the entire north property line.
Thank you. Anyone like to second?
I'll second that.
Can you call roll, please?
Mr. Henson?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Gothard?
No. All right, thank you. With that, we will go to item 6 on the agenda, a continuation of quasi-judicial hearing for a planned unit development request in case 2-2019 PUD. So with that, this will be the last case. Mr. Drury?
Can we wait till everyone exits for?
No.
Sorry.
It's okay. Second marathon.
Okay, this is case 2, 2019 PUD. The applicant is Ketan Patel on behalf of Keaton Patel on behalf of SAS Property LLC and Reed's Place LLC, who are the property owners. Location is at 6685 and 6675 Salem Road. The zoning there is E-retail. The request is to approve a planned unit development application to redevelop the existing vacant building and fueling station as an approximate 2850 square feet drive-through convenience store and fueling station with variances. This would also include 10 parking spaces, a new fueling canopy. A variance is requested for the existing freestanding sign, and the ISR was not provided. There's quite a bit of history on this property, but the former Clark gas station closed about 3 years ago, or in 2016. I'm sorry, that was the Keegan Seafood. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. Let me back up. So as far as the zoning history, so 6685 Salem Road, which was a former Clark gas station, it was constructed in 1940, and the building at 6675, the former Keegan's, was constructed in 1961. So 1940 is important because that means it was constructed prior to Hamilton County adopting zoning in 1948. So there are non-conforming aspects of that property in particular. There are also non-conforming aspects of the Keegan Seafood building, but primarily from a parking standpoint because our parking regulations were modified in the early 2000s. But as far as the building setback is compliant. The current property owner, Mr. Patel, he purchased the building at 6685 Salem in October of last year, 2018, and currently has a contract to purchase 6675 Salem. The building at 6675 Salem, this is the Keegan's building. It was renovated in 1995. A zoning certificate was issued in 97 for a face change to the freestanding sign, and then another signage zoning certificate. The freestanding sign at the Keegan's is proposed to be removed, and just the freestanding sign at the corner for the former Clark sign, that's proposed to stay. However, that would need a variance. It was installed in 2000. It was installed at 17 feet high. Our zoning regulations were modified, whereas a freestanding sign in the retail zoning district is only permitted at 15 feet tall versus the current 17 feet. The Clark gas station, it ceased operation at the end of 2015. And the property owner was actually notified at that time that the freestanding non-conforming sign needed to be removed. So this is the location plan based off of cages. This is the former Keegan's building, and then this was the canopy and the convenience store. This is Bernie and Salem. This is an aerial site, or aerial picture of the site. The topography is fairly flat. There is a retaining wall along the southern portion of the property, and there is an increase in grade on Bernie. Again, the existing zoning is E-retail. There is single-family zoning to the east. This corner here is the City of Cincinnati zoning, and then this is a church, which is also zoned residence. But across the street is zoned retail. This is the proposed redevelopment of the site. Again, the applicant is proposing to reuse the existing Keegan's building, add a cooler addition onto the west side, and then add a drive-through toward the rear of that building. So with that, also modify the building so the front actually faces Bernie, where the fuel canopy will be reconstructed, not exactly in the same location it was. The fueling pumps will be realigned, and then parking will be added along the southern portion of the site. There will be a drive-through, which would be a one-way maneuver through this particular area and out. This area is proposed to be one-way as well to get through the drive-through. And then currently there is one continuous curb cut for Keegan's, and then 2 curb cuts on Salem for the former gas station, and then 1 curb cut on Bernie. The applicant has met with the county engineer, and the county engineer has agreed for these access points: a full movement, no left turn off onto Bernie, a full movement here on Salem, and then a one-way in at that access point here. There are 2 parking spaces that are proposed on this side of the building, and those are proposed for employee parking only. This is the proposed elevation drawing. This would face Salem. This elevation would face Bernie. This would be the west elevation with the cooler addition, and then the drive-through through the back. The floor plan, again, this is the elevation that would be facing Salem. The main entrance would be off facing Bernie, where the counter and the cash register would be. This is a cooler area and storage area. A restroom would be in this particular area facing Salem. That is why the proposed elevation of just the windows on Salem and then signage on the other side. The lighting plan that was submitted is compliant with zoning. No poles are proposed, just the canopy lighting underneath the canopy for the gas pumps, and then wall packs on the building. This is the front of the existing Keegan's building. This is looking south. There's a church behind the site off of Bernie. This building here would be removed, and the canopy would be replaced with a new canopy. This is the facade that would be modified to have the front doors of the convenience store, and then the drive-through would be toward the rear. A cooler addition would be in this particular area. There is a smaller cooler back here, but that would be expanded to run the length of the building. This is the freestanding sign that is proposed to remain. It needs a variance. And the variance is only for the height. The square footage and the setbacks are compliant. There is an existing sidewalk along Salem and on Bernie. This curb cut here would be modified, eliminated, and then a full access just beyond my pointer there. This is the sidewalk on Bernie. This is looking north. This is, again, zoned retail. These properties, though, are zoned residential. This is looking back up at the church. The landscaping and the trees have been removed already from the back of the building. So with the PUD, we're looking at zoning resolution compliance. There are multiple areas of the parking in particular that are not in compliance. As stated, the Clark gas station was built prior to zoning being implemented by Hamilton County, and then obviously before our parking standards were introduced. The Keegan's building, the parking requirements were adopted in the early 2000s, so there are non-conforming sites. So with this PUD, there was an attempt to bring as much into compliance as possible with the limitations of the site and using an existing facility, an existing building. So I'll go through some of those articles. The first item that is not in compliance, and we can go back to the site plan, is the streetscape buffer. 10 feet is required along all streets. There is proposed an 8-foot streetscape buffer between the building and Salem. So this particular area is proposed at 8 versus 10, and this proposed area is 4 feet versus 10. Again, the sidewalk is actually in the right-of-way, so this is additional landscaping that's not there now. The second article are the parking stalls and drive aisle widths must conform to table 5.3. The parking stalls themselves are 9 by 19. However, the drive aisles, especially the two-way drive aisles, are not all 24 feet, which is required. These spaces in particular, when you have stacking spaces that are required for the gas pumps, there's not 24 feet of maneuverability in between the pumps and these parking spaces. Same way in this particular area, if there are cars parked for fuel, there's not the width for stacking or for two-way driveway. There's a 13-foot drive aisle for two-way traffic between the handicap spaces and the stacking in this particular area, and then a 17-foot drive aisle for two-way traffic between the streetscape buffer in this particular area. There's a 21.5-foot drive aisle for two-way traffic between the parking spaces and in the canopy in this particular area. And again, the staff was measuring from the parking stalls for the fueling pumps and the parking stalls here, not necessarily the fuel canopy. The second item is a backup each parking space with sufficient backup area. Again, these do not have sufficient backup area from the stacking spaces for the fueling pumps. There is not enough stacking spaces for the fueling pumps. No interior landscaping was provided. And again, additional landscaping was provided here and up against the building. There is no interior landscaping for the parking lot itself. And then last but not least is the freestanding sign, which we discussed, which is here at this corner. They are proposing to keep the 17-foot high sign. As far as applicable plans, the comprehensive plan identifies this site for neighborhood-oriented, for neighborhood retail. This particular use meets that definition of neighborhood retail. It does provide a service for the immediate neighborhood, and if designed accordingly, could be in scale with the neighborhood, within walking distance of the neighborhood. Economic health, and then land use development staff felt that this particular redevelopment is consistent with those components of the comprehensive plan. Let me go to we do have slides for this, sorry. I passed it. The Anderson Trails and Walkway Plan, there is an existing sidewalk on both frontages, and the applicant is showing a connection from the sidewalk on Salem to the front door. Design guidelines, we did talk about circulation and traffic flow. There are some trouble spots on the site with the current design. Architecture, building design should be thoughtfully considered in scale and orientation. And again, this is a neighborhood retail area. The applicant has made some progress, especially from the original renderings in January to the current renderings, trying to bring the scale and the style consistent with the neighborhood retail versus maybe something on Beachmont Avenue. Landscaping efforts have been made to add some landscaping up along the street. And then signage, staff is of the opinion that the existing non-conforming sign should be replaced with a more monument-style sign consistent with the neighborhood retail area. So as far as the PUD criteria, there are definitely, staff recommends approval based off of findings when consistent with the PUD criteria. We recommend conditions that a monument-style sign be installed and that building materials be identified on the elevation drawings. Specific building materials were not identified on the elevation drawings. And this is consistent with the last staff report. There are items that we recommended approval for a variance. One, we recommended denial, and then some we did not address at all because we felt that more discussion was needed, especially about the circulation elements of this site, and drive aisles and the parking arrangement. But we do recommend approval of the streetscape buffering. Reasons for that is that currently there is none, and since this is somewhat of a non-conforming site, it is able to accommodate some streetscape landscaping with the sidewalk in the right-of-way. We do recommend denial of a variance for the freestanding sign. And that is the presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, any questions of staff?
Yeah, can you go back to the traffic flow? So using your pointer, are you able to enter and go through the drive-through off Bernie, or is it only off Salem?
If you enter the site off of Bernie, you would travel in this direction to come into the drive.
And then exiting, you can't make a left back onto Bernie.
You cannot make a left.
You'd have
You
to
would
make a
need to
right
make a
on the
right
Salem
on
and
the
a left at
Salem.
the light?
Correct.
Okay. And there's a building to the south that isn't part of this. It's also unoccupied.
There's another building owned by Mr.
That's-
Keegan. Yes,
And that's not part of this.
that is not.
Okay.
That is not under contract.
Ms. McBride, any questions of staff? No. Mr. Henson, any questions of staff?
Paul, are you, the parking stalls, I know they're 9 by 19 for P1 through 6. Are the employee and the handicap parking, well, I guess it's one handicap and one non. I can assume those are roughly 9 by 19 as well, right?
The parallel spaces are slightly larger. They're required to be larger.
They're longer.
They're
it looks
longer,
like,
correct,
yeah.
for maneuverability.
Okay.
And the handicap spaces can actually be narrower as long as you have a van loading area beside it. But I believe they were showing it both at 9 by 19, or the handicap space at 9 by 19.
At any point so far, have you discussed any improvements to the existing sidewalk along Salem?
We have not discussed that with them, no. Parallel space needs to be 9 by 23.
Any questions, Mr. Henson?
No, thank you.
Okay, the applicant would like to address the commission, present their case.
Thank you very much. My name is Carl Hartman, 3478 Holly Ridge, 45245. I'm engineer for the applicant, and this is, I've done multiple projects now for Keaton, and I find him and his developments, or him and his retail stores, are very first class. He takes care of them. He makes sure there's no trash. It's taken care of, well-maintained, and good effort within the community. I make mention of the fact that a little history, and I think history is important at this site. Keaton has been a resident of the township for 19 years. My family moved into the township in 1945, and I've had a lot of interest and knowledge of this area because my family had real estate ownership of the properties, this is particular, and other properties on the south side of Salem and also on the west side of Bernie. Why I mention this, and I think Paul hit it very clearly, is that these sites were developed prior to a lot of the zoning that is in place now. And what happened, actually, this was the first part of the township to really economically develop after World War II. Prior to World War II, Anderson Township was a rural community. And with the development of, that's why I say Salem Pike was the first area to develop before the Beachmont Corridor. Beachmont Corridor, as we all know, is developed and is redeveloped. An prime example is the town center, and even the McDonald's up here that was built in 1956 has been rebuilt. Well, I think it's the opportunity we have before us now to analyze this site with the same idea in mind. It's time for the redevelopment, come up with a modern use of the site, a need that basically we feel is in the community and has been demonstrated in the community, that this site has fallen into neglect, whether it be the gas station, the old fuel station, or the old fish market. They have fallen into neglect and need to be revitalized. Keaton has agreed to put brick on the exterior of the building on the three sides. The back side, the south side, is blocked. You're going into the hillside and really would serve no purpose to do that. Basically, the staff made two recommendations. Recommended approval under Article 5.3D-1. We concur with that, and hopefully that you will too. The article relative that he recommends denial on the freestanding sign, we can accept that. We would like to have the option, though, of working with the signage with staff and feel that we can come to an agreeable nature with the staff to accomplish what is good for both the township and for the site as far as marketing goes. Basically, that's, I try to present minimal presentation and speed it up with the hour of the night, and that's, so any questions from me or Keaton, we're welcome.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Henson.
Just real quick, I don't see an elevation for the canopy. And
Correct.
is there any thought been given to adding signage there?
You have to speak up, I'm a little hard of hearing.
Has there been any thought given to adding signage to the canopy for the visibility along the intersection?
I didn't still understand this question, I'm sorry.
I think you're going to answer it, so.
If you could state your name and address.
Keaton Patel, 1029 Ashbury Road, living in Anderson Township. Mr. Van Hagen, yes, if we like to have the sign on the corner, if something we give away the sign, we can put the sign on the pricing sign, at least on the canopy. So either one, I'm okay with it.
I note that today, driving on 32 down by Dry Run Road, that mini mart there has a low profile sign, sort of, and I would envision something like that would be the maximum what we would do. But again, I think we can work this out with Paul and the staff.
The primary concern I actually wanted to talk to you about or ask questions about, the two parking spaces that are identified as 7 and 8, the handicap and then the other one. Have you given any thought to making those completely parallel parking spaces? An instance I can think of is like the Marathon on Clough and 8
Yeah,
Mile,
I
I'm sorry.
understand, but I think the calculation we have it is more parking than current.
No, all I'm saying is
He's talking
turning
about
them
making
from
them
90
parallel this way.
turning them from 90 degrees to having them be flush parallel.
I don't think the traveling public would do that, quite frankly. I think they're used to pulling straight in. And so therefore, if we indicate them that way, how would we use the handicap access for the van and everything else? It could be done, yes. Whether
Yes.
I think
And
the traveling public would use it.
most like I'm on this business for so many years. I have other gas station also. Quietly, frankly, I'm saying like whoever comes to our customer, they pump the car on the canopy, they pump the gas, they come inside. That whoever they're gonna use the drive-through basically, because that's the main purpose from them to quickly.
Well, the reason I bring that up is that short of rotating them so that they're flush, I think we need to get rid of
I
them.
understand, yeah, but we can work with the staff, or it's option to do it.
Because 13 feet for backing up is unreasonable, especially if it is a handicap van. It's going to be much too large.
How about we move the
Well,
number?
we have 24 feet between the bay and the island.
Paul, didn't you cite 13 feet?
I did.
We have,
And we did that with
on the site
taking into consideration a car getting fueling.
If somebody's there, if it's occupied.
It's the top button there.
which
The
one?
green, or the top one.
Okay. Between here and the pump, we have 24 feet.
Correct, but between there and the parking
If you
aisle
have
where
a-
a car would be is 13
If
feet.
you have a vehicle here, it's going to be somewhat restricted, correct. We could turn, very seriously, we could. Where you have the unloading for the handicap, if it would be the pleasure of the board, we could turn them.
Or parking number 8, the handicap parking, can we move it to parking number 7? And just minimize one parking?
We could probably have space adjacent to parking stall number 6, too. We could add one there.
Right. I'm recommending that we rotate both of them, and we can move on to some other issues.
Okay.
Thank you. I have no further right now.
Thank you. Ms. McBride.
Okay, so, what, I got this one. Mr. Patel, where are some of your other locations? I'm just curious.
He has one on Old State Route 28 in Milford, Miami Township. He has the Sunoco up on 125 Ohio Pike, adjacent to McDonald's. He has the BP station in Bethel at the corner of Plain and 133. Yes. And you have,
Last year, we built one ground-up location, and right behind the Ford plant is on the Route 32, old Route 32.
Oh, okay.
For Batavia Township, and I built another one in Batavia Township is 208 Amelia Olive Branch Road. That's we just done like 4 months ago.
So,
he has experience in this line of work.
and we've got some experience working with fuel stations.
I made
So,
the statement, didn't I?
so, Mr. Patel, can you tell me where the fuel tanks are gonna be?
Existing fuel tank is already removed.
Right, but you're
And-
gonna put new tanks in.
It's going to be new one, going to be same area.
So, show me how, with the pointer, if you would, how are you gonna get the tanker in?
Well,
to-
the fuel- Okay, the fuel tanks are gonna be off ours.
No, the fuel tank.
Yeah, where?
The refueling of the tanks.
Yes. We,
I turned it off.
when we meet with the Hamilton County people, the fuel truck coming like this way and stop up here, unload the fuel, they have enough to reach the tank, and they can just make,
Well, they can't make the left out of
they
there.
cannot make the left
But
turn
it's
on it.
off ours.
But they can't make the left, so how are they gonna get out? I guess, have you run auto turn on this site?
I think it was the opposite, really. In talking, we met with Eric Beck out of the Hamilton County Engineer's Office, and we projected the tanker would come in here, unload, and then circle out this way, and he will not cross the center line. He'll have enough room to do this. Again, this is going to be in the twilight, in the early morning hours, as was anticipated.
Oh, yeah, my experience is, although that's what's intended, that's not what always happens. My experience is that fuel tankers will only unload from their passenger side. And what you're talking about is unloading off the driver's side.
They have enough to reach the hose on it.
If you come in this way, you can park here, unload off of this off the right-hand side. The fill caps would be here, the vents would probably be over here.
And the canopy is 14-foot high. It's enough to go the truck under the canopy.
You come in this way, you sit here, you unload from the right, and then you circle out this way. Or you continue on down Salem Pike. in, sit here, unload, and then circle out.
And you're obviously gonna have multiple deliveries, I mean, because a lot of, like Pepsi is now coming in a semi and so forth. And that's gonna be
That's
between the
loading.
store and Salem.
Yeah, we show the loading dock on it too.
We
which-
showed up here, we have up on the drawing, Ms. McBride?
Right, right. I guess I will want to see turning movements on this. I will want to see a truck turning template on this site plan, both for the tanker, and I want to see where the tanks are added to this, and then also how your delivery trucks are going to get out, because the way it's marked right now is, I guess they could come in and then go out this way, but the logical thing would be here and then unload into the store, but they can't get back out, so, anyway, I want to see those circulation routes.
Furthermore, maybe a little bit, the delivery trucks should come in here. I myself visualize the trucks sitting over in here and unloading out over on this side. And so they would have the ability to come on out in here, out here.
Okay. Well, I want to,
understand.
like to see those movements. So I have real concerns about the access drives and stuff. I drive a Nissan Armada, which is a rather larger vehicle, which is good for your gas business. And I also live close to here, so I could be a customer. So, we've talked about, Paul's identified a number of the areas where we're deficient, and another one I'll just point out is when you've got parallel parking spaces, you've got to have 23-foot drive aisle, and by my measurements, you had 13 feet. So I don't think these are really usable spaces, particularly in account of the fact that you've got your stacking spaces for the drive-through now blocking these spaces. Employees are not. You also have the fifth stacking space for the drive-through blocking the entrance into the site. So if the semi with the Pepsi comes, but there's a fifth car here because this business is so successful, then this guy's left sitting out here onto Salem. So I think that's a problem. Let's see.
We have eliminated one approach, one curb cut.
Right. The dumpster is located, can you talk to me about how Rumpke's gonna service that dumpster?
They come straight.
They're gonna back all the way out, and they're gonna back out onto Salem.
Or back here and turn and come this way. You come in, front end loading.
I got
unloading,
that, yeah.
Similar to what they do now there, what they did in the past.
Right, but
they're doing one of
how are they
our-
gonna get out? That's my concern.
They're doing same thing on our other location too.
Right now, this existing building was the fish market, had the dumpster in the same location.
Yeah, I understand, but we're
We're
starting
trying to
all over
improve.
here again, so, so they're gonna back out onto Salem?
Going back out to here and turn.
If there's somebody that comes in to use the drive-through when
The-
Mr. Rumpke's there?
The Rumpke coming midnight. They come before 5 o'clock.
What are the hours of operation of your store?
The drive-through is going to be open 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. and the store is 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. or weekend is might be 11.
And are the pumps, can you use the pumps 24/7, or are the pumps only tied to the store?
No, pump's going to be closed
Okay.
by.
I have concerns with Rumpke backing up out onto Salem or in that whole general area.
They are using on our other location too, same way. They just go front.
That
pull
one
in,
didn't come to me, or I would have had similar
Yeah.
concerns on that side,
And they
okay?
just back up and they go with the other route.
The dumpster enclosure itself, I think you're indicating it would be screened with a chain link fence with slats, and our code requires either a masonry wall or a solid wood fence, so you would need to change that. As I mentioned, I'm concerned about the turning lane, or the truck turning radius and their whole path. The photometric plan that you said, so you're gonna take down the existing pole fixtures?
Yes, we
Okay.
remove all
And-
the existing.
And the only fixtures are gonna be wall packs on the building and the
Yes.
light under the canopy?
Yes.
Okay. We do, my firm does speedways all across the country. We do all the Kroger's fuel centers. And my experience is that typically you have to get a variance on the light level under those canopies. They're typically 20, 30, and 40-foot candles under there. to provide for a safe light level when you're dispensing fuel at 10 o'clock at night, particularly if you're a woman, putting credit cards in, that kind of thing. And, you know, you're at 12.9. Something isn't quite right there, so you might want to look at that again, because I don't think that's a light level that's practical under a fuel canopy. Are you going to have any outdoor storage? You know, the mulch, the squisher fluid, the firewood? No, okay. Where's the air dispenser going to be? Flat tires, the air, do you have one of those?
No, we don't.
No,
have.
okay. And do you do any of the pump toppers that go on top of the pumps, the signs?
No, it's just the comment.
Okay. What about ice machines, pop machines?
Ice machine is going to be inside the building.
Okay, and the propane cage
Propane cage, yes.
will be outside the building?
Yeah, outside the building.
Is that the only thing that'll be
That's
outside?
the only-
Okay. The pump stacking, the code requires 2 spaces, I believe, doesn't it, Paul? So you've got the car that's at the pump, and then you're supposed to have 2 stacking spaces in addition to that, but you don't have any stacking spaces.
Well, you say 2 per pump, 1 on each side?
Well, this is I'm assuming this is a double-sided pump, right?
Correct.
So you've got the car that's being fueled, and then you've got to have 2 stacking spaces in addition to the car that's being fueled for each pump island.
Well, I think that's one of the things we realized at the site being developed before the current regulations are, that we need to have some exceptions to everything that's in this. And I think we reviewed that and feel like we have satisfied the staff's concerns.
Well, I mean, I understand things about, you know, reducing landscaping and so forth, but I can't sacrifice things that are going to do with how this site is going to function. And I don't think not having any stacking spaces is acceptable, at least to this commission person. Next page. And I guess the county engineer was okay leaving, or Eric was okay leaving a 40-foot wide curb cut on Bernie?
Yes.
Okay. And how are you proposing to curtail left turns out of there?
Signage?
Okay. The elevations, how are you going to treat the cooler on the side? What's the finish on the cooler?
We are okay with doing anything. If you brick,
A brick enclosure around the cooler? Okay. And then bricking the columns on the canopy?
canopy column is going to be covered by metal fascia or something.
Yeah, but you could brick it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, those are the initial questions that I had. I guess, guys, in summary, this is just too much on here, and it just doesn't function. I mean, I'm willing to work with things like, you know, reducing streetscape because we're gaining streetscape, but this just isn't going to work.
It functions as an existing fuel station currently, correct?
Carl,
It
you
can
know,
be reopened, right?
that was then, this is now, okay? And I can't in all good conscience approve something that isn't going to work. And this just simply, it's just too much on here.
Well, my point was that it's worked in the past.
Well, again, I didn't approve the pass, so.
I made my point.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Mr. Lewis.
The employee parking, what is the number of employees, the maximum number during any period, and where will they be parking?
2 employees at a time, the one on the drive-through and one on a regular inside the store, and they are the parking and.
They would be taking up some of the existing,
No,
what I
not-
would say, customer parking, or,
No, not the customer parking, right behind
In
it.
the back, behind the cooler.
okay, over on the left?
They can't either get out because it's only 13 feet wide or because there's stacking spaces there. So,
I
And
think you
that's-
covered a lot of my points.
And the second thing.
So, and then we had the hours of operation, you said 9 AM to 10 PM, that was my
And the
other.
10 parking spaces more than what we are thinking. That's the lot. If I have like a 7 and 8 relocated, that should be okay for stacking distance also. Because this is just the, if you see that drawing,
Up there?
the retail area is only 1,200 square foot. Remaining is the stocking, coolers, and the drive-through. The drive-through is customer not coming. They just come in a car over there. So if you're saying like, okay, it's parking 7 and 8, we can relocate it and not have any parking on the front of the store.
Well, I think some of that you're,
No, that's fine. I'm good.
I don't have any questions, so thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak in favor of the application? Anyone like to speak opposed? Please state your name and address.
John Apgar. I live at 1057 Bernie Lane, up the hill from the gas station. And it's a tricky curve there that when you're going past my house and then on down the hill, people are speeding all the time. 3 crashes in the last 2 months in front of my house. And I just think that it's not the right place to have somebody come down the hill and want to turn in. And I had another point. Let me think. I waited too long. Let's see. Oh, the traffic on Salem from like 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock or 5:30 is pretty extensive. Goes back down towards the west side, and of course going to the east side, it gets all backed up. I suspect that's going to inhibit the cars going into their spot, into the station spots, or make it more congested. I just think that's going to be a big problem. I think there's been, I don't know if it's owner's family or, had a number of uses before, and it's not lasted very long. It's kind of come and gone. I think there's 3 or 4 owners prior that didn't do so well. It's kind of come and gone. I think it's just in the wrong place. Too small. That's how I feel.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ma'am?
My name is Jana Marshall, Westhoven, and I live at 1164 Bernie Lane, which is right on the corner, directly across the street from the church. So our view from that hilltop is the very lovely stagnant pool of water. That is the abandoned gas station now. So I scribbled out everything because I realize I only have 3 minutes to talk. But Anderson Township's comprehensive plan poses an important reflective question. What will Anderson Township look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? The developers just highlighted how history is important. I would ask that history not repeat itself. It was a gas station at one time. It clearly failed. And the seafood restaurant or whatever market failed as well. So eliminating parking spaces and switching things around and not allowing enough room for cars to get in and out, why is that an appealing place to want to go get your gas or your beer or your chips? It's not a place that I would pick driving down Salem. We came to Anderson, my husband and I, he had to leave for work, to find green space and a quiet neighborhood. We were very concerned with this area on the corner, and because of that, we looked at other houses. But I just loved that old house, and I kept going back to it. And I was reassured, that it was now no longer a gas station, that hopefully it would never turn back into that. And then I stand here today with this appointment. So I would ask that the zoning board please consider your Article 4.1G in the zoning resolution. There's several points that I'll make, and I'll try to make them really quick. Number 3, there's already at least 6 gas stations, 2 drive-throughs, and convenience stores within 1 mile of my house on the corner of Bernie and Salem. So I don't think it's compatible with current land uses. There's heavy traffic volume in the afternoon and evening. Proposed development will be hazardous to local residents, commuters, and pedestrians. I run a lot on that path, and it's already a mess going through that intersection. Number 4, it does not allow adequate protection of the surrounding property and orderly and coordinated improvement of the property. It's currently a rundown gas station and seafood store, which I believe is reflective of the property owners. They have done nothing with the stagnant pool of water that remains there, which is a breeding ground for mosquitoes. In addition to its current state, future plans do not consider the current flow of traffic, volume, and pedestrian usage of sidewalk. Project will hinder traffic flow, create confusion, and increase the potential for traffic accidents in that area. My husband's a state trooper, so he deals a lot with intersection traffic accidents, so I can attest to that. There are currently 6 gas stations, convenience stores, that's number 6, and 2 drive-through locations within a 1 to 2 mile radius of the proposed development. It is not essential to add another one, and it will not serve the community, and it's not necessary. Number 7, the gas station drive-through will increase air pollution caused by cars waiting in line for fuel, gas leaks from nozzles, and tank refills. A study completed in 2011 by the Energy and Resource Institute found that air surrounding gas stations contain much higher concentrations of VOCs, benzene, and BTEX, which are known to be cancer-causing vapors. In addition to air pollution, there is an increased potential of groundwater contamination and most definitely an increase of non-point source pollution and surface runoff. I see that Mr. Patel did not include that in his plans. That was noted in your in the paper. So this will impact our Little Miami River and Ohio River. A redeveloped gas station in close proximity to others does not conserve scenic features of Anderson Township. Number 9, the current plans only further confuse traffic patterns in the area. It's clear the property owners did not take into consideration the amount of pedestrians that use the sidewalks in the area to visit Beach Acres Park. When looking at the plans, it is also clear that there's absolutely no insulation given to pedestrian circulation. Once again, the property owners, number 10, failed to consider their surrounding neighbors in the area. Approving this project will increase noise pollution drastically, not to mention the traffic noise, honking, drive-through bells, tires screeching, music blaring, and loitering. The visual privacy will be 0. Lights from the gas station canopy, drive-through, and convenience store will shine through the surrounding houses and backyards. 11, the plans show no amount of access to open space, which will greatly impact local residents, pedestrians, and people trying to get in and out of the gas station.
Okay, ma'am.
Sorry, number 12, the last one. The proposal is detrimental to the present and potential areas, and it reduces, its studies show that it reduces property values considerably. So I please ask that you would reconsider this space to be either rezoned or take your time to really decide what the residents of Anderson really want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Now, if the applicant would like to address any of the comments that have been made, briefly.
The way I say it is redevelopment, this, what is right now, and what we are trying to do it, is improve the area, improve the surrounding neighbor, the value of the property also. Is the, I don't know what happened to failure on the past, but they don't did the right job. They cannot maintain their property. That's why. In this transaction, we talked to the Keegans also, and he don't like that. He just want to move it to, he have another fish shop, same thing. But we are not fair. We come here to clean that mess, the previous owner, whoever did it. We like work with the neighbor, we like work with the township, and we want to put this business back in the,
Well, I think that speaks for itself, because Keaton's already bought the corner. He owns that. He's not under option. He owns that. He has the experience in this business. The people you'll find, the failures are oftentimes associated with management, how they management, the staff they have, and everything else. This man brings that experience with him to the table.
Thank you. With that, we'll close the public hearing and open discussion about the commission. Ms. McBride, we'll start with you.
Well, we'd love to see the site redeveloped. And, Mr. Patel obviously has experience in this business, but I sincerely believe that we want him to succeed if he's going to invest this money and time and effort into the site. But I just do not see how the site plan as it exists today is going to work. I just don't see how it's physically going to work. So, I mean, I'd like to maybe give them a list of things to look at, and I hate to say this because you guys are going to hate that I'm always suggesting we continue something, but I'd like to give them a list of things that they could look at and then, come back to us next month, hopefully with some answers on those things.
Mr. Lewis.
I'm okay with the providing guidance. The last thing we want to do is approve something that will be here 3 or 4 years from now, trying to redevelop it again. Personally, if you don't have the mobility and the ability to get in and out of something, people won't go there.
Right.
So let's do it right the first time, or this time, and have at it with your recommendations.
Mr. Henson.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to add to it other than, it does seem like a business that you understand well and probably could be successful with, the right amount of area and geometry to pull it off. And this, on paper, looks like a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. It's a singular item, but I'm primarily concerned about that 13 feet gap in between the drive aisles and the fact that there is no stacking provided for the fuel pumps. I mean, all it takes is one car to gum up the entire works if there are people getting gas. And, it is a very convenient location for people coming up off of Kellogg and, want to swing into the drive-thru and get beer on the way home or Coke or whatever it is. In that regard, it seems like it could be ideal from a business standpoint, but, man, all it takes is a couple slight a little bit too much business to cause a failure, and that's kind of what we're here to trying to protect you from in a sort of roundabout way.
My thoughts are, it is prime for redevelopment. It'd be great to have something redeveloped on the site to, in essence, improve the aesthetic. It needs it. Internal circulation is a huge issue on the site, and I think those items need to be addressed. For us as a commission to look at, very carefully to, understand how it's circulating. Not we think the truck's going to pull in here and we think it's going to unload here is, run that analysis, understand how that circulation is going to be, which may inform the site plan slightly also. So that's my 2 cents. I do believe a continuation would be in order. Hearing what you heard tonight from the commission, to come back with, sort of all the things we've asked for and how you can improve that site and the circulation within. So with that, anyone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion that we continue case 2-2019 PUD, former Clark Gas Station at 6685 and 6675 Salem Road, until our next meeting to give the applicant a chance to review some of the comments that we've made here this evening.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Could you call roll, please?
Mr. Henson?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Gothard?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, could I just add, do you have any questions about any of the things that we brought up, or I just want to make sure that they have a clear...
You have to realize, even though I got new batteries in my hearing aid, I'm not sure I heard it all clearly. And I can get together with Paul. Paul, you understand?
I think so. Just for a couple of clarifications for me, because one thing that we've been working with the applicant for quite some time, as you know. One of the issues was the number of parking spaces required based off of our calculations, we had to include all of the square footage of the building, not just the floor plan area. So that creates problems other areas. Is that a concern, the number of parking spaces? As much of more of a circulation issue?
As configured, it's a circulation problem.
Seems like more of a circulation issue, okay.
And I would be willing to do more toward granting a variance on the number of spaces required and having those spaces actually physically work.
Function, okay.
Than just putting spaces on paper.
So I think we got the rest of everything.
If you understand it, Paul, we'll get together.
Okay. Just for the audience too, the next meeting is May the 20th. It's bumped up a week because of Memorial Day, so there is a quicker turnaround. We do not send another notification out. The property will be posted with a sign, but we won't physically send out notices. But May the 20th is our next meeting. I'll have to get with you on that. It'll be a quicker turnaround. Tight, yes.
So, Mr. Drury, what's
Thank you.
next? Thank
I'll
you.
go get dinner.
Thanks,
Thank
Carl.
Any idea next month?
So we'll have two cases. The two cases that were continued tonight. That's all that I.
But they'll have to do the legwork to, in order to,
That is correct.
so
So-
I have a graduation on that Sunday in South Carolina, but I can come back
Okay.
after that.
I mean,
So,
are we expecting anything new?
I'm not sure yet.
If we were, what would we be expecting? Would you say? You don't ask.
I'm not sure yet either.
Are we gonna adjourn first?
Uh-huh.
December, I have a lot of comments to when you come in, we'll open it, and we love to have this business back in. We try to work with the call, whatever we request, and we are back and forth so many times. You see
You brought me in late in the game.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that your business is successful, and as somebody said at this end, you know, if I have trouble getting in and out of your parking spaces or getting in and out of fuel, I'm not gonna come back. And so we don't want that to happen to you. We want the business to be successful, and so we just want to make sure that the circulation issues are addressed and that it works really well for you. Okay?
Like I said 70 years ago, my dad owned the property.
Conflict of it, no.
so any
Take care, guys.
objection to adjourning? With that, we will adjourn. Thank you very much.
As Jay said, when he runs the meetings, it goes like this. So I offered to switch.
I was joking.